So this is the thought of the day. A lot of you who have been commenting on these videos have said that they like the perspective. So thank you. Honestly, I find that this is a welcome break in a very, very busy day all the time. So back to Larry. This this post is about the pioneering effect of Larry, and so if we go back to the 2010s to 2012, there was that was the beginning of the emergence of LGBTQ plus affirming care policies in the zeitgeist, right? And what was so pivotal about the Larry phenomenon, despite all the efforts of Simon Cowell and company, is that when you think of like LGBTQ plus or queer literature, queer icons, queer romances, I've said this before, but they occupied a kind of like fringe subculture. It was sort of like there's the mainstream, and there's this sort of niche community that has its own stuff, its own its own stars, right? And it there was always this sort of delineation between this is heteronormative romance and it's isn't it sweet, isn't it wonderful, look at Titanic and Jack and Rose and all that stuff, and it was always boy girl, right? Cisgender boy girl. And everyone loved Titanic because that movie was trending forever, for weeks when it first came out. And but that was a movie. So Larry, in a way, or really was, it's like Jack and Rose became basically Harry and Louis. No girl, we take the girl out. But this time it's a real story. It's really people, it's not characters in a script. And the effect of Titanic as a fictional movie with that, I don't know, multi-million-dollar budget that was like unheard of at the time, we got it all for free with these two because they gave us a real life Titanic. Thank God without the ship, and thank God without an iceberg, and thank God without a disaster. At least that kind of disaster. But a Psycho is a disaster. However, it you see this emergence of Larry really was, and I think it really had to be something that was not fictional. It had to be something that was in real life, of this. It was the first time you saw a depiction of this, how special kind of like meeting your twin flame could be. And it was not a fringe thing. It was not this it wasn't this sort of kink. Well, I don't like to use the word kink because kink is sometimes used to other people, and I don't want to other anyone. But it moved out of the fringes. It moved out of the off the beaten path. It was mainstream, and ironically, it was actually accepted by a large part of the community. Now, there was a period of time, and I was not around, but from what the veteran Larrys have said is that there was a period of time when the Larrys were kind of treated as others in the One Direction fandom. But I look back at some of these archives, and I'm like, I don't think they were relegated that long. But if I'm wrong, please tell me. And where Larry emerged and became a pioneer is that it was this special, sweet, heart-touching love story in real time with real people that were both two men, or emerging young men, and nobody batted an eye. It didn't. It wasn't this creepy thing, which people that are homophobic would say. It wasn't this, like unique sort of, you kind of, what's the word? It wasn't depicted as this type of, you know, oh, I can't think of the word, but like it wasn't depicted as this sort of like rare jewel sort of like fetish thing. It didn't have any of those underpinnings. It had literally, this is a love story and that's just what it is. And it's just so sweet. And I always like the word eclipse, but it sort of eclipsed the generation that were coming of age when Titanic came out, because Titanic was fiction. So, how it was pioneering and actually life saving is that there have been people who posted on Tumblr and on the Reddits who said that if it had not been for Larry and it had not been for seeing those glances, those subtle touches, and they at the time were slightly younger than the band members, but were middle school, beginning to high school, and had not come out, were living in these maybe not so open areas, like very conservative towns, and it was a promise because One Direction had basically been the next Beatles, and it was the chatter in the social media of how unique it was, and it was the culture that grew around it. It was like the first glimmer of acceptance that was by proxy, because for the first time it really was not a threat that a boy band could have two members that were actually in love with each other. Because if you go back to NSYNC in the late 90s, around the contemporaries of when Titanic came out, if Justin Timberlake and Lance Bass were having something going on, I think that there would have been at that time, it could have ruined the band because people were way more homophobic back then, and there was just some real old guard thinking. But this was the first time where, in fact, because if they had come out, if Simon Cowell had somehow been immobilized, I am willing to bet that they would have become even bigger than they were, and I'm willing to bet that. And for the first time, it changed on a dime. It flipped the script, where, okay, yes, you're hearing the fact that my notification sound in my phone is actually watermelon sugar, and when my phone rings, it's actually treat people with kindness. So yes, those are the sounds of my phone. That's what you're hearing, and I'm not answering it right now because I'm recording for you guys. But for the first time in this organic space of fans, it was, if they came out, would actually be better. And that has never happened before, because if they had come out, they would have not gone into the fringes. They would have stayed in the mainstream. They would have been even more the pioneer. So that's one way that they really were a game changer. Number two, the other reason why they were a game changer was actually quite personal for a lot of people, where if you were living in a really conservative area where there was still a lot of, like, the Bible Belt, the old traditional Bible Belt, where there's a lot of discrimination against LGBTQ plus, and you did not think a love like that was possible, if you internalized some of it because of all the programming, suddenly you were shown how beautiful that kind of love could be, because finally love was love. It had no confines. But to somebody that had been told and had been in an environment that condemned them for who they were, which there's nothing to condemn, finally they saw a depiction of how beautiful love could be, how it wasn't weird, how people loved it, how people were rooting for it, and how there's nothing wrong with it, and look how awesome it can look. And it gave people a symbol of promise that one day they too can have that, and how it was completely natural, and there was nothing strange about it, and there was nothing to be averse to or react negatively to. If anything, it was like, look how beautiful this is, and who the fuck cares that it's two guys, really? And I don't think people sometimes realize, and I know some people realize, but other people don't realize that it literally saved a few people's lives, if not many people's lives, because there are people who post today that say that One Direction saved their lives because the community, the fandom, people met their best friends in the fandom. And Harry has been interviewed saying that people have written in and said, we met our best friend in the One Direction. I mean, it's really quite beautiful. And in that sense, the community that was a safe space, it saved a lot of people's lives, because the teenage years really, really can be hard. High school can be super, super tough. And, it was always hard to be a teenager, but what was what made the 2010s and onwards particularly tough on adolescents, the internet, the explosion of social media, and the cyber, all that stuff. But again, there was a counteracting force to all the negative of the technology and the social media platforms, and it was the exact same mediums that became positive in the whole One Direction space, because One Direction grew because of social media. So yes, I mean, it's the end of the day, I'm kind of rambling, but what I really can see why people posted even when Liam Payne passed away, that they are so grateful, and the people who were in Argentina, who protected Liam Payne's father from being harassed by the media, had said that they did that. They wanted to be supportive to Jeff Payne because his band saved their life, and they're not joking, and it's not funny, and it's not to be trivialized, because on so many multiple levels, yes, Larry fucking saved people's lives, both in the spirit and literally. And that's why they're such a pioneer on both the depictions of love, and they finally gave people the visceral experience that they so needed to see how beautiful their love could be, because there is no difference in the love between Jack and Rose, or real life Jack and Rose from Titanic, versus these two very cute fellows. There's no difference. It's like, why are we even talking about gender at this point? And on another note, the notion of like gender fluidity, like the masculine presenting, feminine presenting, the concepts of that began to emerge around the 2010, 2011, 2012. And I had to learn this stuff, and I got it. And there's a lot of academic theoretical trainings on this, because it's about the advancement of like the social cohesion and acceptance. But I only got it intellectually for such a long time. I did not really get it kind of in my soul, in my heart, and really was able to take it from an academic, like theoretical, conceptual, all that sort of like heady stuff. The notion of gender fluidity I did not fully get it. And when I say get it, it's not just in the head, it's in the heart. It's, you get it at that sort of meta level. I didn't get it until Harry Styles. Until Harry Styles and the dress and the Vogue photo shoot, because he was so masculine presenting when he had the long hair and he looked like a prince. And then sort of in his solo career, you see him kind of gender bending the way that Bowie did, the way that the 80s band Eurythmics did, like Annie Lennox, very androgynous. But you see him gender bending, and it's almost like we just can go with it. It's like really, it's like it's such a holistic kind of experience to see him just do it, and it doesn't feel like he's shifting into different method acting techniques. He's just pulling out different variances of himself that are more on the feminine energy, and then are more on the masculine energy, but it's still congruent and genuine, and it's still him. And that, oh my god, I finally got it. Funny thing is, I finally got the notion of gender fluidity without words. It had to be experienced, right? And so that's that for people that they live that too, just not on stage the way he does. It, again, that's hope, because you know what? There it is. There's fluidity, and it's not strange, and it's not weird, and it's not unnatural. It's just what is, and it's just what makes a beautiful human, when they are in authenticity to who they are. And people who seem to like so far what I've been posting, I will be honest, I love psychoanalysis. If you look at psychoanalytic work and just how much it can get very rich, I'm by no means a psychoanalyst, but I probably, with all the continuing ed classes I've gone to, it's probably coming up in how I'm analyzing. But when I'm analyzing all this, I'm coming from a place of just awe of what these two people accomplished at such a young age. I wonder, honestly, if they're so present to this, or even if they are present to this, if they even can believe it, because I don't think they set out to do anything other than sing and have fun and, share their creativity and share their vision. But they they have changed the world in a way that the Beatles were not just a band, the Beatles were a cultural revolution. And I can't believe I missed the Beatles 2.0, but I'm glad I caught up at least. But the people who missed, who weren't around during the Beatles, like, there are so many cultural earthquakes and eclipses that they did, and then we didn't have it again until One Direction, which is amazing that they pulled it off, given that they, unlike the Beatles came together naturally, organically, in Liverpool. One Direction was obviously formed in front of us, but nonetheless, to, there's that saying, like, to the one who's given much, much is expected. And I still keep saying the universe was using this wonderful band beyond the obvious, beyond just to give entertainment. They were using this band to be kind of like one of the lights in the global consciousness, through obviously entertainment, which, with mass broadcast, can send a message, can change a vibe. Music can change a vibe very quickly. To kind of transcend a lot of negativity that was happening at that time. I mean, there's negativity happening now, so that's probably why we're all falling back in love with these people, love their songs, and that's why we've all brought What Makes You Beautiful to like a billion streams on Spotify, because it's negative again, as we all know, because there's a lot of things going on right now that are not pleasant. But in the 2010s, the 2012s, if you look at what was happening politically, that was happening economically, that was happening, in all the different uh, sort of categories of life, yeah, they were our light.